Hey guys, Justin here. I wanted to take a quick second and let you know about Growth Now Movement Live, coming to Reading, Pennsylvania, May 30th to June 1st. This event is going to feature some of my top guests like Fabio Viviani from America's Top Chef, best-selling author and future board expert Sarah Centrella, Albie Manzo from Real Housewives of New Jersey, and many, many more. This is going to be a game-changing event. It is truly going to be a day-long rock concert for entrepreneurs, forward thinkers, and people who are ready to take their life to the next level. So if that's you, head over to gnmlive.com and grab your tickets today because prices are going up soon. Again, go to gnmlive.com now to level up your life and truly create the life of your dreams. Can't wait to see you there. What is the secret to unlocking your full potential? What makes your idols any different than you? How do you become the person you've always wanted to be in life? This is where you get all of your questions answered. My name is Justin Shank, and I sit down with some of the most epic individuals who are changing the world with their actions in business and in life. We discuss how they did it, why they pushed themselves, and more importantly, how they were able to focus on continuous growth to achieve their dreams. Welcome to the Growth Now Movement. Danielle, welcome to the show.
Hi, Justin. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. And you just had me on your show, which was super exciting and fun. And we talked about a lot of fun stuff. Hopefully we can kind of have the same kind of fun on this show. But I'm really happy to introduce you to my audience because, you know, you and I connected in Orlando at PodFest when we were both speaking there and, you know, really just kind of connected immediately. It was one of those like instant, yeah, you're a good person kind of vibe and feeling. And you had kind of mentioned you got the same thing about me. And come to find out that's kind of your world, right? Like energy and the spiritual side of things is kind of what you focus on. But why don't you take a minute or two and just tell my audience, who is Danielle?
Who is Danielle? Who's Danielle Mercurio? So first of all, yes, I agree that we definitely had that instant synergy, which I love and I really look for in this world. And so part of the work that I do is all energy, essentially. So I show up as a life coach, and through doing that, it's really about helping other people tap into what their thing is, what are they here to show up for, and how can they get into a space where they feel really on board with it, really confident about it. Because I think so often we can have these intuitive hits in our life, and we can have these moments where we're like, ooh, I think I'm supposed to pursue that, or I think I'm supposed to move forward with this, and we get really excited. And then we take it to the outside world, and our confidence isn't there to back it. Our worthiness isn't kind of in the space of realizing that we have that potential to explore it, and it starts to die out. And so for me, my work is all about kind of keeping that fuel, that fire inside of you so that you pursue the things that you're here to pursue, and you can do it in a way that feels confident and isn't waiting on the validation of the outer world. And the ways that I do that is through coaching. I also incorporate astrology. Astrology is an amazing blueprint. I look to it as psychology, honestly. I can read someone's chart just like you could read a Myers-Briggs, right? It's a personality assessment. So incorporating astrology in that fashion. I also teach Kundalini yoga and meditation, which is another form of spiritual awareness and learning how to tap into your inner self. Again, finding that voice, that teacher from within so that you understand how to navigate your life on your own terms in a way that feels good for you and the outer world as well. And in addition to that, I run a meditation teacher training where I help other leaders and teachers and influencers and individuals that are just ready to have more impact and share the tools and the different methods that they've used to come to find their own self through meditation. Oh, and I do comedy.
And you do comedy. You know what I really like about what you do is that you do everything so authentically and organically. Like it is just you show up in a way that you are you. And I think a lot of people don't do that, especially when they become a coach and they think they have to be a certain way all the time. And so for you, you're like, this is who I am. Like you're either going to show up or you're not. And that's why you're able to, you know, take this spiritual thing and almost joke about it as a stand-up comic. But then you also, which I've seen your show and you're hilarious. And then you also can do it on a serious level too, which you have read my chart. And I was like, holy shit, this is terrifying how spot on this is. Because honestly, before that conversation, I didn't even really believe that astrology was actually something you can truly follow. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, totally. That's how most people feel. And that's why I always like to just kind of share, because I think I have a way of meeting people where they're at, because I understand that spirituality can seem really out there and really weird, and there's a lot of doubt around it. So I really try to share it in a way that meets people where they're at from their level of understanding so that they can actually embrace it a little bit.
Yeah. How did you even start to get into this?
Astrology, or just this whole world?
This whole world, like the spiritual awakening. I think we all kind of have that moment, whether it's like a rock bottom moment, or, somebody introduced it to us, whatever. What was your moment of like, oh, wow, there's like a thing beyond just living?
Yeah. So it kind of happened twice. The first time was when I was 5, and I grew up Catholic and kind of in that modality. And I definitely believed in God, and I believed in this feeling of, there's this higher energy. There's this God-like person that's kind of looking out for us. I always believed that at a very early age, but I also felt like church was like boxed in, and I was like I just was very confused by it all. But my first kind of sign of this feeling of there's something outside of the church when it comes to this feeling of spirituality I was actually at a grocery store. I was in the checkout aisle with my mom and my little brother, and we're young, and my mom's got her hands full. And I saw in the checkout aisle there these little scrolls, and the scrolls represented your birthday and a sign that went with it. So I looked up my birthday, and you know what I'm talking about?
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. So I saw those, and I told Leo, I'm on August 9th, and I told Leo, and I showed it to my mom, and I was like, I want to get this. And she looked at it, and she was just like, that is not for you. Put it back. Like, whatever. So when she wasn't looking, I literally put it in my pocket and I took it home. I just knew I needed it. Right.
Yeah. That 5-year-old thief.
Yeah, I was. That was my first sign of being a gypsy right there. So I still remember taking it home. And I mean, I could read somewhat at that time, but I remember opening it up and seeing all the pictures of the sun and the lion and reading words like confident and actress and spotlight. And I just remember being like, wow, when I grow up, I'm going to be a Leo, and whatever this is somehow knows who I am. And I thought that was so fantastic and so amazing. But I also, because astrology, especially, 30 years ago, wasn't really as much of a thing as it is now. And it wasn't something that you pursue, right? What was I going to do? Get a turban and a neon sign and go to the Jersey Shore?
Crystal ball.
Yeah. I was like, that's not really what I'm supposed to do. So I didn't really understand what place astrology had for me. So it was always just kind of the secret hobby, so to speak, and this thing that I would go and geek out in the library and find books. And again, it was my psychology. It was my way to understand myself. It was a way to connect with something more. And it was a way for me to understand other people as well. So that was my first gateway into the world of spirituality, esoteric, if you will. But again, it was always very closeted, and it didn't really have a place in my life. And so my outer world was kind of this just whirlwind of trying to please others, trying to play it safe, trying to do what was expected of me. And I think a lot of us can fall into that category of society's timeline, right?
For sure.
And so I was trying to do the timeline thing, and I went to college. I picked a major because you were supposed to. It was elementary ed. I actually never taught in a classroom. I was just constantly lost, and I just couldn't find my place. And I kept trying to do what everybody said that I should do, and it wasn't working. And it wasn't until, and so after college, I worked in restaurants for a little bit. Eventually got a job in corporate. I was working as an administrative assistant, and it was all fine. But at the same time, I just felt lost. I felt like I'm not being the Leo that I thought I was supposed to be when I was 5. I'm not doing anything. I'm not connecting to this God energy. I'm so confused because I feel like there's something more for me. But when I think about it, it feels blank, and it feels like there's no hope for me. And so because of that kind of lost feeling, I would wake up every day and I would just say, God, get me through today. And then at night I would escape, and it would be through alcohol, men, drugs, shopping. It didn't really matter. Every night I needed an excuse and an opportunity to black out because I was so confused and I was so stuck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So,
and I didn't know how to manage my life because, go ahead.
I mean, it's a lot. I mean, and I think a lot of people do that every single day. Like exactly what you just explained. There are so many people in this world that are living that way. They're getting home, they're blacking out, they're escaping, they hate their life every single day. They don't feel fulfilled. They don't know what their purpose is. And, and a question that comes up all the time, at least for me, and I'm sure for you as well, is like, everybody talks about, oh, I found my purpose. Well, how do you find your purpose? Like you said, like you knew there was something, but when you tried to figure it out, it was just blank. Like, how do you begin that process?
Yeah, well, I mean, first, before I could even figure out what my purpose is, I had to figure out myself and figure out how to find a way to accept who I am as I am, right? And it was from that place that I started to kind of understand the sense of purpose. But yeah, so essentially what happened was through a series of unfortunate events, I hit my rock bottom. I fell. I had a really unfortunate incident that happened to me that made me realize the next day that if I don't get help, I'm going to keep destroying my body, friends, any sense of having a life, so to speak. And so that was the catalyst. It was a little over 9 years ago for me to explore getting help. And I sought out therapy. I found group coaching. Eventually I got into meditation. And one of the things that I was discovering in all of this, though, was a lot of people were saying, you just got to love yourself. You got to get into self-love. You got to be more positive. You do the affirmations. And that was really hard for me because I was in a space where I wanted to get help, but to go to this space of self-love and being positive was too extreme. I was just like, I can't stand myself. I'm constantly beating myself up. I feel like I have no sense of who I am, and I don't feel like I even belong. I look in the mirror, I'm disgusted. So like, how can I shift that quickly? And so what I kind of found organically was this opportunity to create this thing called self-okayness. So I wasn't going to try to love myself. I wasn't even going to try to like myself. I was just going to try for one day to be okay with myself. I'd wake up in the morning and I'd say, today I'm going to be okay. And if I start to notice stories where I'm judging myself or I'm beating myself up, I'm going to cut it out. I'm not going to entertain this story. And so I just kind of started practicing that day in and day out. And eventually through this self-okayness, I started to kind of move into this self-like. And from the self-like, I started to kind of be like, oh, like there's something to you. Like I started to feel like I was regaining a sense of self. I was exploring who I was again. And then it was from that point that I remember one day in meditation, I kind of had this mind-body experience where I felt love, and I felt love for myself, and I felt appreciation from myself. And it was from that space, and it didn't happen overnight, okay? Like, I think that's the thing too. A lot of people talk about how it happens overnight. It didn't for me. It was through months of showing up for myself, good and bad, that brought me to this moment of self-love, so to speak. And it was from that place that I finally started to understand how to explore my purpose, how to explore the fact that like, oh, I need to help other women that feel the way that I do. And I need to help other individuals in this way. And I need to be open to receiving what makes sense for me in this world, because now I have my back. I'm in a relationship with myself. I'm my own best friend. And from that space, there's a lot that I can explore and do.
Yeah, for sure. Like, and self-acceptance and self-love. Sorry, what was that? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know what happened.
I don't know. You can hear me now, though?
Yeah.
Great. Now I have to edit this.
Sorry.
You're good. But I believe that, self-acceptance and self-love, I believe, is the answer to a lot of the world's problems. I think it's the problem, the answer to addiction. I believe it's the answer to suicide. I believe it's the answer to a lot of things that people do right now that has become an epidemic in this world, and we were just speaking that, just 2 nights ago, I had a friend overdose, clean for 2 years, completely clean for 2 years, went and saw his mom and then checked into a hotel room and overdosed. And you have those questions of like, what if he could have discovered self-love? Like, what could that have done for him? So what are some examples that you have seen or experienced or walked people through where it was a complete shift for them from potential suicide to them now changing the world with their own power?
Yeah, I think the first step is giving people a chance to be heard where they are without judgment. I think that's the biggest thing. So often people are looking for help. They're not looking for your opinion. They're not even looking for your advice, so to speak. They're just looking for a release. And the biggest thing that I can give people, and I had to learn that too, even when I was first starting out as a coach, I felt like, oh, I have to give people an experience. But no, the experience is just giving someone an opportunity to feel understood, and not even through your words, but just holding space and saying, I know you're going through a rough time. I'm here if you want to talk, and giving people that space to talk, giving people that opportunity to release what's going on in their mind, even if it feels stupid or silly or they're embarrassed by it or it feels wrong. That can be a shift just right there. So opening up to someone and letting them know, I'm not here to judge you. I'm just here to listen. And I think that can be a really big shift for people. So that's the first thing is giving people space to just feel love, so to speak. And then from there, I think it's really important for individuals to start to question and explore, where did this come from? And where does this story live? Where did this identity that I'm holding on to that doesn't really feel like me come from? And starting to explore that space of where did it come from? And from that space, knowing that it's not ours to claim, it's not ours to take on, how can we start to let go? How can we start to break up with that part of us? And I think through those shifts right there, we can start to clear some space, because that's the biggest thing. We don't want to put more stuff in our being when we're going through something, or we're in a space where everything feels hopeless and everything feels like it's not going to happen. To put more on our plate, to put more like, oh, you got to do this tool and that tool, and you got to meditate every day, it can just be overwhelming. So I think it's really important when you're feeling overwhelmed, when you're really confused, I understand depression. I've battled it myself, to understand that it's going to be okay. Just hold on, recognize that this darkness is not real, and we can start to release it and let it go. And from there, we can open up into what the next steps may be.
Mm. I think sometimes when people look at, your life or my life, they say, oh, well, of course it's easy for them to be happy. They're doing what they love every single day. And it's that whole chicken before the egg theory, right? Like, which came first? And at least in my own experience, I found the happiness first, and then the universe repaid that happiness. And I know you and I have had conversations about that. So like, how can you get somebody to that space of happiness, or how can somebody get to that place of acceptance before they're living the actual life they want to live?
Yes. So that's a big one. I think, it's layered, and there's a lot of patience that's involved. And I think that's the hardest part. I think we get really impatient because when we want things to be different, we want them to be different. But in order for that to happen, we have to recognize that it's a practice. And so the practice of kind of accepting where you are is, again, it's layered, but I think what the important thing is to start to notice where you have power, where you have a choice, where you are able to make decisions that benefit you. I think we're a very people-pleasing society. I think we're very much ingrained that everybody else comes first before ourselves. And self-care is starting to pick up. And I think self-care is very important, but we've got to go beyond just, oh, I'm having a self-care day and I'm getting my nails done. Self-care day is, I'm putting myself and my priorities to the top of the list. I'm taking my, healing, or the person that I'm working with, my coach, my therapist, whatever it may be, seriously. It is coming before other people. So I think before we can really, again, continue to get to that space of happiness, we have to find self-fulfillment. And part of that self-fulfillment comes from learning boundaries and learning how to say no to what isn't working, and then starting to give what could work a chance and staying with it. And finding ways to be accountable is really important as well. I think sometimes we think we have to do it all on our own. And in some ways we do, but I think having the right support in place can make a huge difference.
Yeah, no. And you're so true, because, it's funny. I've done, I don't even know how many interviews. You'll be like episode 197 or something like that. And I ask a question. So here's a sneak peek. I ask a question on every episode, which is, what's your definition of success, and what are 3 things you do every single day to ensure that success? And somebody had asked me the question a while back and said, what's the common theme between all these quote unquote successful people that you've been interviewing? And I had to think for a second. And then I realized that it was that question. And it was the 3 things they do every single day was self-care in some way, shape, or form, every single time, whether it be the meditation or exercise or reading or whatever. It was all for self. And I was like, that's the mind-blowing thing. And that was like a huge shift for me, is to realize that like, you have to fill your cup up first, or you're not helping anybody. You're just hurting people, in some way, shape, or form. So that's so true. And I appreciate you sharing that, because I don't think people still get that. Like, they think, oh, if they're happy, then I'm happy. It works the other way around,
Exactly. My happiness comes first, Because at the end of the day, it's you. When you take your last breath at night, even if there's someone in the bed with you, it's still you. And when you wake up in the morning, it's the same thing. It's your breath. It's your body. And so we've got to remember that.
Yeah, no, 100% for sure. So let's talk a little bit about, some of this other stuff that you do. And obviously one I mentioned in the kind of the beginning part here was your podcast called Curiously Confident. Wow. So confidence is something, I'll be honest, confidence is something that I've struggled with a lot in my life. And I've gotten a lot better with it, but still to this day, I question certain things. So we talked about speaking at PodFest. What a lot of people didn't really see is that I started to have like a bit of a mental breakdown before I spoke, because it was the first time I was giving that talk in front of peers, and other podcasters. Before I gave that talk, it was like the people who wanted to break into podcasting, who didn't really understand the space. So I kind of had like this meltdown where I wasn't confident in what I was saying. And thank goodness Bruce Langford was there, and he walked me through a breathing technique and helped me get through it. But confidence is something that is a necessity, in my opinion. I think that, when you show up in the world, you have to show up confidently, or people aren't going to listen. People aren't going to hear what it is you have to say. So how does somebody tap into that confidence, even at times where they may be questioning what it is they're doing?
Yeah. So, well, first of all, thank you for sharing that experience that you had before your talk. I was there, and I saw you, and I thought you were so natural and really poised, and just felt like you belonged up there, and so that's what I saw from my perspective.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I
totally meltdown before though.
I get it. I mean, so I haven't really shared this with my audience yet. I've been wondering when I was going to, but I was in LA 2 weeks ago, and I was doing an event in Malibu, and it was a talk on confidence, which I know that's what we're going to talk about right now in a moment. And so it was stuff I knew, but I started to stalk it was a 2-day event, and I was speaking on day 2, and I started to stalk the event on Instagram, and I saw that there were celebrities there, and there were all these influencers and people with million followers and all of it. And I started to really get in my head, and I started to freak out. I started to nitpick the outfit that I chose. I started to worry about, just superficial things. And I was losing my confidence, and I was losing it quickly. And that morning before the event, I was meeting a friend, and she's actually very similar to a Bruce energy. Her name is Gail Barron or Gail Burrell. And I met her really quickly before. And as soon as I saw her, I just started sobbing. And she was just like, what? Like, what's going on? And I just kept saying, I hate my outfit, which of course, like, wasn't the real thing. Right. And she was just like, you're beautiful. Like, come with me. We went back to her home, and she did a breathing technique with me as well. And the biggest thing that I kind of uncovered in that moment was that I was having a moment where I didn't fully believe in my next level of success. I wasn't fully allowing myself to embody what it is that I desired. Because the thing is we can have desires, but they mean nothing if we don't feel like we deserve them. And I think that's the biggest piece when it comes to confidence, is understanding what you're worth. A lot of people will talk about fake it till you make it. I don't believe in that, because I don't want to bring something that is inauthentic or fake into my practice. What I want to bring in is this feeling of worthiness, and willing to work towards that worthiness, willing to work towards what it is that I know I desire, because I know that I deserve it. What is that piece right there? So when we look at this piece of worthiness, when we look at this piece of desire, when we look at this notion of success, what we really want to look at is kind of having the understanding that confidence is really just a muscle. And it's something that we build. And there's times where we build it, and we're able to pick up that weight, and it feels really easy and good. And we feel strong, and we feel like, yes, I'm doing the thing, and I'm capable. But then eventually the weight becomes too light, and we've got to pick up a heavier weight. And that can be really scary. And we've got to now build that muscle again. And that's really what confidence is. I don't think it's something that we'll ever fully achieve in our lifetime, but something that we will always practice and step up into. So this space of confidence, this space of worthiness, really comes from the understanding of there's something that I want, and at the same time it scares me. It scares me to maybe show up at this meeting at work. It scares me to show up at this reunion with my family. It scares me to show up on this first date. But there's a part of me that knows that I'm meant to be in that boardroom. There's a part of me that knows that I'm meant to be comfortable around my family. There's a part of me that knows that dating is a value to me and something that I want to incorporate in my life. So therefore I am going to show up for it. And in the notion of I just have to show up and let the rest unfold, that is the beauty in confidence. And then we walk away and we're like, oh, I did it. That wasn't so bad. I could probably do it again. And I think it's that reminder that kind of keeps us going.
No, and I love that. And that is the goal. Like, just show up. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And when I look at the trajectory of my podcast and the speaking that I do and all those things, at first I was like, well, I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if I can. And so I'd question myself and I wouldn't do it. And then when finally I was just like, you know what, I'm just going to show up. I'm going to show up as my best self, whatever that is at that very moment. Everything else kind of happens. And I was having coffee with a friend last night and we were talking about my event that's coming up. And he had asked me if like I had anything scripted out for what I had to say. And I was like, no, I kind of have a direction, but I'm just going to kind of just do it. And he's like, cool. He's like, that's when you're at your best. And I realized that being myself, meaning being a little goofy, cracking a joke, making fun of myself, doing those things when I'm speaking are the things that resonate. Right. And so like for me, I didn't get comfortable when I was speaking at PodFest until I did the whole thing of like 80% of podcasts do less than 100 downloads an episode. And I raised my hand and said, who in here just went, holy shit, I don't suck as bad as I thought. And for whatever reason, me saying the word shit on stage when I didn't know if I should have or not, like that's what made me comfortable. So I showed up 100% as myself and I cracked a kind of a strange joke as myself. And then everything kind of fell into place.
Yes. Yeah. And I really like the way that you shared that, because that's how it works. You do have to show up. And I think that's also where spirituality starts to come in for me. I think, again, whatever you identify with as maybe a higher power or a connection, or maybe it's your higher self, that I trust in that so much that I know that if I show up and then that's why I don't prepare a lot either. I find that when I over prepare, I'm too in my head and it's not coming from an authentic place. So it's like, I'm going to show up. I'm going to trust that I can do this, even if I'm scared. And I'm going to trust in my God and something greater to help me and make sure that I don't, completely fail. And I never do. Neither do you.
Yeah. I love that. I'm sure I have. I'm sure I've been close to failure. There's been times in my life that I go, what just happened? This is crazy. But I do believe that how it happened was how it's supposed to happen. And so if you look at it that way, like, okay, cool, it's not a failure. Just in your head, we play things up, right? We play out scenarios when we think it's supposed to go a certain way, whether that's with our relationships, whether that's with our business, whatever the thing is, we play it out in a certain way. And we think if it doesn't go that way, then it's wrong. And so you have to kind of be accepting of that. So let's talk a little woo. Let's talk about the woo-woo side of things, because there are two sides, right? Because especially in your world where you are, a life coach and a business coach and a leader, you are also, very connected to the energy and the spirit of all that stuff. And so how do the two flow together for you? Because I think sometimes people look at it and they go, it's either this or that, but obviously that is not the case.
Right. So, so I think it's all interconnected. And I think for me, and it's funny because I had moments where I tried not to be woo while doing this work, and it really sucked, to be honest. I wasn't really getting much business, and I wasn't really making much progress. And anytime where I've gotten kind of angry or bitter, I'm like, I'm done. Then the universe is like, fine, then have fun paying your bills on your own, Danielle. I'm like, okay, let's do this. But it can't not be intertwined because, I'm self-employed. And so the work that I do, I need kind of that essence of understanding that there's something else that's going to help move this forward. There's so many ways to kind of take this or describe it. But when we look at spirituality from the lens of it's just kind of our guide, and it's just this force that you can kind of breathe into when you wake up in the morning and you're setting your intentions for the day before you reach for your phone. One thing I say is look in the mirror before you look at somebody else on your phone, because so often we reach for our phone, we're on the Instagram and we're looking at somebody else before we've even taken a chance to look at our own self. And so wake up in the morning, set an intention, say, this is how I would love for today to go, and just go about your day. And notice if you feel the presence of something else. Notice if you feel an energy of things coming together. Whether you believe in a God or not, I think we can all believe in the energy of our collective, and that I do believe that we're all here to help each other and work together. And when we choose that flow, when we choose that scenario of today's going to be a good day, it usually is, because the other days when we wake up on the wrong side of the bed, when we look at our phone first, when we're running to get out the door, it's usually not a good day. And it has nothing to do with God. It just has to do with like our intention. And so I think how woo you want to go is up to you. But I think it's really important to start to look at energy and start to look at how we can start to control it and use it in a way that works for us, just by doing simple things like setting our intention. And then it starts to grow and build from there.
Yeah. And I love that take, because, we talked on your show about how I'm into the spiritual side of things, but I'm not like head first, dive deep into the deep end kind of deal. Because I think that there is that balance of, yes, we have to believe in energy, but there's also people that are like, oh, all you have to do is sit and meditate on it, and all of a sudden it's going to appear on your lap. And I don't believe that side of that thing. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah. And, I believe in variety. And there are times where I have sat and meditated and it literally fell into my lap. But there are other times where I've done that and nothing has happened. And so it's kind of, it's just every day is a little bit different. And sometimes it will take in certain ways, and other times that it won't. And just accepting that.
Mm-hmm. No. So obviously do you meditate every day?
Pretty much. And my meditation practice, though, isn't like, I know some people, it's like they wake up 20 minutes every single day. That's it. My meditation practice varies. There are days where I literally will wake up and I will just meditate. There are days where I will go on a walk and I'll have a walking meditation. Every morning when I'm making my coffee and I'm playing music, that's a meditation for me. I like to meditate under the covers. You know about that one.
I do. You can say that on this show. It's okay.
Okay. Yeah. So I do a masturbation meditation, which is really fun. It's like literally you're using the art of touching yourself with your breath to have a heightened experience. And you can use it for manifestation or visualization or just fun. It doesn't have to be, I think there's a lot of rigidness around sexuality and spirituality. And I think the two have a place where they can live together. So yeah, my rule is I need to show up for something mindfully every day. That's just for me. It doesn't have to be just sitting, but it can be just some time that I carve out where I'm away from everything else, and it's just for me and my connection to myself and fueling my spirituality, so to speak.
Yeah, and so for me, I always used to say that I was a terrible meditator, because I thought it had to be that sit down and put your feet on the ground and sit in a certain way and do this and that. And like, that just didn't work for me. But then when I was able to discover my own things, like you said, taking a walk outside, or I can meditate while I'm driving, like all those things. And like and by the way, what that is, like meditating when you're driving, don't close your eyes and meditate. For me, it's just, smelling the smells, hearing the sounds, and truly being in it, instead of worried about like that person who just cut me off, or where am I getting to and what time should I get there? It's just about breathing while I'm doing it and kind of experiencing it. And when I figured that part out, I was like, oh, wait, meditation isn't just one way. And I think there's kind of a misconception about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's never going to be perfect either. I think a lot of people believe like, okay, I'm going to sit down, like what you said, and zone out and have this experience that's out of this world. And I'm going to completely blank out from my mind. And that could happen, but sometimes it may just be you sit down for 3 minutes and you focus on your breath, and maybe you're thinking about your to-do list the entire time. But you know what? You took 3 minutes for yourself. You made a point to sit down and breathe. And that's really all that matters. And then you can start to bring it into other platforms, like what you discovered intuitively through driving, which is awesome.
Yeah, for sure. And I love that. So, you talk a lot about, at least on your Instagram stories, like all the high-end woo-woo stuff, like Mercury, I can't even say it, Mercury retrograde, which apparently we just got out of this. And these are the things I don't understand. And when I started to pay attention to how you were describing it, it made more sense.
Uh-huh.
like how the energies connect, and when the planets align in a certain way, all of a sudden, like, this is why those things happen. Can we dive a little bit into that, just for my own understanding of, like, why is the energy on one day completely different than the energy on another day, and how can we as human beings kind of balance that?
Yeah, juicy question, and I love that you call it high end.
It's the high end woo.
The triple Leo in me is like, ooh, I bow to that. So essentially, this is how astrology works. And I like to describe forecasting or horoscopes kind of like the weather, right? We check the weather just to understand how our day is going to go. Right now, I'm looking out my window. It's sunny. I think it's like 60 degrees. That's going to kind of have an effect on my day, right? I could look and say, oh, I have a party on Saturday. What's the weather going to be like? And it's outdoors and I see it's raining. You're going to be like, oh, like that kind of sucks. But at the same time, at least I know. I can prepare. I can figure out how to move my day forward. We use astrology in the same way. So the breakdown of astrology essentially is we have these 12 signs, right? Everyone knows the 12 signs of the zodiac wheel. Starts with Aries, goes into Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, and so forth until we move all the way to the last sign, Pisces. So this makes up a 360-degree wheel. And we want to imagine that this wheel, this zodiac circle, so to speak, is living underneath our solar system. So we have our sun, the moon, and all the planets, and it's almost like a game board. And the planets are always moving around the zodiac wheel, and they all move at different paces. For example, the sun takes a year to go around the zodiac wheel, right? Every month, give or take, we enter into a new sign. That's the sun moving into a new sign. You and I are talking right now. The sun is in Aries. In a couple weeks, it will be in Taurus. So it takes a year. The moon, for example, takes a month to go through all 12 signs. So they all move at different spaces. And so what we do is we take a screenshot of where everything is for the day. So for example, if I took a screenshot of the solar system today and saw how it was placed on top of the zodiac wheel, I would start to understand what the energy would be. So I would start to see, okay, the sun is in Aries today. What does that chemistry mean? The sun is about our masculine, about how we generate things. Today, if I took a screenshot as well, like the moon is in, what's the moon in today? It's in Cancer. Yes. So it's in Cancer right now. So I can think about, okay, the moon is all about our feminine. It's about our emotions. It's in the sign of Cancer. What's that mean? And so we start to kind of look at the chemistry between the planets and the signs they're in to understand how our day is going to go. And since every day the planets are moving at different paces, every day is going to have a different flavor, a different energy. Now, sometimes the planets will not just move forward, they'll also move backwards. That's called a retrograde. So Mercury is our planet of the mind, logistics, communication, technology. And about 3 to 4 times a year, it decides to go retrograde for about 21 days. And when it goes retrograde, essentially all the energy that it usually gives to us when it comes to technology and communication is taking a reverse motion. And so what's happening is instead of things just functioning on our behalf, we have to do the work ourselves, or we have to make a decision to actually lean back a little bit as well. Oh, if Mercury's taking time off, then maybe I should take a little time off. Maybe I shouldn't be so buried in my inbox. Maybe I shouldn't be over committing myself to things. Maybe I should take this time to be reflective as well. So we can look at what the planets are doing as an opportunity to see maybe what we should be doing as well. And so we can use the moon phases. We can look to see what planets are in what signs to understand what that chemistry is like. And it gives us a little bit of an opportunity to read the energy of the day. Or we can look ahead into the future and see, we can already track, like I have, it's like an almanac. I can track all the way up to 2100 what position the planets are going to go. So if you like picked a random date, I could tell you the energy of that day because I know where the planets are going to be based on the way that they move. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. And I need that almanac because I plan on living forever. So just send it my way.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, it totally makes sense. Now, one thing that I've realized is that there are a lot of people who are in the spiritual side, and I'm not down talking them in any way, shape, or form.
That's okay.
But they don't own the space, meaning like they don't take control of it, and they go, oh well, the planets are doing this, so I have to be sad, or the planets are doing this, so everything's going to fall apart. And I don't think that's necessarily true. So like, how do we make sure that, if we start to follow these signs and we follow the planets and the rotation of the sun and the moon and all these things you were talking about, how do we make sure we don't allow it to control us and we kind of control it?
Totally. I'm so glad you brought this up. So one thing that happens a lot is something called spiritual bypassing. And essentially what that is we're kind of throwing our hands up to the universe and we're saying, oh, well, either the universe has my back, it'll all work out. I don't really have to show up and do the work. Oh, Jupiter, for example, is our planet of good fortune. It's in Sagittarius right now. And so if you're a Sagittarius, from now until November, you're going to have a little extra luck over these next few months. Now, that doesn't mean that like, okay, great, like here's your lottery ticket from the universe. You don't have to do anything. What that's showcasing is right now, you have a little bit of energy that's saying, hey, luck is on your side. Why don't you take a risk? Why don't you show up for something that maybe has been scaring you because you have this extra backing? So we want to look at things like that. It's not that because if things are going well, that means you take a back seat and surrender and just let them go well on your behalf. It's about co-creation. And so having this intel becomes then an opportunity to co-create in an even greater way. And same for when things maybe aren't aligned as well. There are moments where the energy of the planet may feel like a rainy day may feel for you. Now, again, you have a choice in that moment. You can be the victim to it and you can say, oh, well, the plants are doing this, it's not my fault, or, blah, 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 and become victim and not move forward, or say like, this is why my life isn't going the way that I want, or say, okay, today is going to be a little bit of an off day. Knowing that, how do I want to manage it so I'm still able to show up, but I'm still mindful of the fact that maybe I am going to feel a little bit sad, or maybe I am going to be a little bit irritated. What do I need to do to be most successful with what's currently happening? And we get to make a choice from there. So I think the biggest piece to realize is that astrology is a tool. Horoscope, forecasting, things of that nature are all to build awareness. But at the end of the day, it's about how you want to manage it and how you want to create a choice around the information that you've been given.
I love how you compare it to the weather. Like, I think that makes it so digestible for a lot of people because, I'm that person at times where I'm like, oh God, I'm sick of the rain. And then one of my friends would be like, you know what? I'm just grateful that we have the rain so we can have grass and things are growing. And I'm like, thanks for making me look like the negative guy in this friendship. But when you compare the two, right, it just makes it so much more digestible for somebody to say, oh, it's like forecasting out a day. How do I prepare for this versus how do I let it affect me?
Exactly. Yeah. And so that's how I use it. And so I try not, Mercury retrograde seems to get the worst rap for things because it's true. I mean, there are tech issues that happen. Things tend to go wrong. It's kind of annoying, but I think all of us hyping it up as annoying and a bad thing and, oh, life is going to suck for the next few weeks because it's Mercury retrograde doesn't really help anything.
Yeah, I actually had to reschedule 2 interviews during that time because my internet wasn't working. Like my internet would go out every single day, which never happens otherwise. So it's true. I mean, it affected all that stuff, which, there's definitely a truth to it for sure. So I want to give a plug and a shout out to your stand-up comedy as well, which is a whole nother level of something that you do. And I bought a ticket unknowingly and came out to your show in Philadelphia and I loved it. And, this is something that you've been doing for how long now?
So I started it. It's actually funny. I was on Eventbrite because I was creating a ticket for something else and I was looking at past events and I saw I created in September of 2016. So it's been a couple of years now.
Yeah. What made you get into stand-up?
So, growing up, I was always kind of considered the funny one, right? Like I was the one that was always kind of cracking jokes at the table, or I'd always have kind of a sarcastic comment. And people would say to me like, oh, you should be a comedian. But I'm like, I don't know how to tell a joke. Like, I just know how to be funny in the moment. And I don't know how to be a stand-up comedian. That doesn't seem right to me. So it was never something that I pursued. But what happened was as I was starting to get more into this work as a life coach and more speaking opportunities started to come up, I noticed that I couldn't help but be funny. So kind of like what you were sharing about your talk at PodFest, how you cracked a joke and that opened up the room. The same thing was happening for me. So I'd be, speaking at an event and I couldn't help but just crack a joke or share something that was just kind of off-centered, but hilarious. And people were coming up to me time and time again being like, that was super inspiring and you're hilarious. And I kept hearing it so much that eventually I was like, well, what would happen if I curated a comedy show that was around what I do in the spiritual world? And that's essentially how it came to be.
Yeah. And like I said, I attended your last one and I know you have more planned in the future. Dates aren't set just yet, but we'll make sure that we let people know once you find the dates. I highly recommend. I think I was one of 2 men in the room. I was probably the only single man in the room. But I highly encourage men to go check this out. Number one, you can find a woman. They're in the room. Number two, it's an interesting take on the spiritual side, but also the feminine side, and like, how can I approach this in a manner? Like I really enjoyed it. I thoroughly enjoyed it. So I highly recommend everybody go check you out as a stand-up comic, because I've been to many stand-up shows, and I certainly laughed out loud a couple times, which is hard for me to do.
Oh, well, thank you, Justin. I really appreciate that.
Of course.
Yeah, it's definitely an area where I'm building my confidence, because having a niche like I do, kind of the spirituality, and it's also dating, being single, things of that nature. Sometimes I don't know where my place is in all of it. And sometimes I question myself, because I've been to open mics and things and completely bombed. So I'm just like, am I really funny? Is this like really a thing? Right. But so anyway, I appreciate it.
Yeah, and I like you took the entrepreneurial side and you put together your own shows versus, like you said, getting booked at comedy things, because like you also understand, like, you have an audience. You have a particular audience that would want to hear it, and like you get it and you formulated it yourself. That's totally the entrepreneur side of you, which I love. So obviously here you are as a successful coach, speaker, comedian, so on and so forth. It's something that I would say that you're a successful person, however you want to define success. So my question for you is, what is your definition of success? And what are 3 things you do every single day to ensure that success?
So thanks for the little preview before this question. So for me, success is finding a way to show up authentically, finding opportunities every day to do something that feel like you and feel like you can make a contribution from that space. If I can mix the two, who I am, who I identify as Danielle, into something that creates some sense of impact to somebody else, that is a major success for me. And so the ways that I do that, of course, is this notion of what you've been hearing time in and time out around self-care. And my self-care for me is filling my cup every morning. So my mornings are for me. I don't book calls. I only do work that feels like I want to do work. I like to just make my mornings for me, to wake up. I don't set an alarm. I make coffee, I listen to music, I dance, I pull tarot cards, I look at the astrology forecast, I journal, I create. And so that's how I ensure, first of all, that my success will start to come to form, to give myself that space. And then other ways for me is building connection. I can't, again, being self-employed, it can be very isolating. And if I stay in that isolation, then I lose sight of that notion of success. So finding places where my people, where my community is, so to speak, where can I create connection? Where can I meet like-minded individuals? Where can I establish connection? Because it fuels me, and it also, again, gives me an opportunity to help fuel others as well. So my own sense of self-care, building connection, and then the showing up even when it feels scary, or it feels like, ooh, like it'd be so much easier to just not do this, or not take that risk, or say no to this, or not push myself to the next level. When I say push myself, I say that with grace, but giving myself a chance to show up to whatever that next chapter is, because usually it's not just handed to me, and knowing that it's something that I create, and it may feel really scary, but I step into it anyway.
Love all of that. So thank you so much for sharing that, because I think intent and rituals are the things that gets us to the next level. And that's why I love that question, because it's what sets you up for success more than anything else. And I appreciate you sharing all that stuff. So I finish up all of these episodes with 5 rapid fire questions. But before we get there, how do people get a hold of you? How do they book you? How do they hop on a call? Where do they go to find you?
Right. Well, you can give any cute single man my number. You have it. So feel free to share them. And then
she loves dick pics, by the way. So.
No. Classy. We like class. To be honest, I don't even like them when I'm dating someone, or like I'm intimate with someone.
It's an odd thing to do.
Yeah. In the middle of the day, like that, like you showing me your boner. Like, what?
Aziz, so we're going way off the cuff here. So Aziz Ansari, who's a comedian, has a joke about that and how ridiculous it is that people send dick pics. And he talks about, like, what did we do before cell phones? Did you run up with like your Polaroid and be like, here's my dick, and just hand it to somebody? It's not something you should do. Anyway.
And like, how do you want me to respond? With a photo of my vagina that's like, hey, like, like what? Like, oh,
that's amazing.
the trim today. What do you think about that?
That is amazing. If I did previews for episodes in the beginning of my show, this is what I would clip out and put in there. You going, here's my vagina. Hey.
She says, "What's up? Tell your dick." She says, "See you later."
That's amazing. Amazing. So anyway, how do people find you? How do they get a hold of you?
So, essentially under my name, Danielle Mercurio. My website's daniellemercurio.com. Right now, I really have a lot of fun hanging out on Instagram. So follow me on there. Make sure you check out my stories. I'm on Facebook as well. And then my podcast, Curiously Confident. I live in Philadelphia, so check out the events that I have there. And I bop around throughout the country, so look out for me. Those are the ways.
Awesome. I love it. So we're going to get the 5 rapid fire questions. Some are fun, some are serious. I just ask you this. Answer within one word or at the most one sentence. Are you ready?
Okay. Yes.
First one is, what is your favorite smell?
Lavender. No, but it's not. Rose.
I do love that lavender was your answer because that's like a default answer for a lot of people, and then you corrected yourself.
Yeah, I love rose. Okay.
This is a 2-parter. What is your favorite and your least favorite word?
Ooh. Right now, my favorite word is juicy.
You do say that a lot.
I do. My least favorite word? Stagnant. Ugh.
Love that. So if you could have dinner with one person, living or dead, who would it be?
Whitney Cummings.
That's a good answer.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of your life, if you could only be remembered for one sentence, what would that be?
One sentence?
One sentence.
Danielle Mercurio. She was spiritual, but she was no saint.
Love that. That's a great one. And obviously this podcast is called The Growth Now Movement. So I wrap up every single episode with this one question. And that is, in your life, what has been your biggest moment of growth?
My biggest moment of growth was the day that I decided to take care of myself, the day that I decided to give myself a chance, the day that I said, I am so clueless and I'm so scared out of my mind and I have no idea who I am or what I am, but I'm going to take a chance and see if I can figure that out.
I love that. Danielle, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom with my audience and truly just for being you. I appreciate you and your friendship, and I'm so glad we connected.
Thank you, Justin. I'm so glad that we connected as well, and I really appreciate you, and I am so glad I got to be on your show.
Yes. Oh, by the way, folks, she's also going to be at Growth Now Movement Live as a movement maker. So make sure you get your tickets and hang out with Danielle. And you can ask her all the questions about her vagina pictures and all the other things in person. So go to gnmlive.com and grab your tickets now. Thanks, Danielle.
Thanks, Justin.
Thank you guys so much for being a part of the Growth Now movement. This is how you can really help me out. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please share it out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that fun stuff. And let's grow this movement to epic heights. And it's all going to be because of you guys. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.